Today's guest is a living proof that one can pursue one's passion in life and do so while making a profit as well. Matt McWilliams is my guest in today's episode, and he is the best-selling author of the book, Turn Your Passions into Profits. And he's worked with some of the top companies and entrepreneurs on the planet. People like Shark Tank's Kevin Harrington, Tony Robbins, Dean Graziosi, Michael Hyatt, Lewis Howes, Brian Tracy, Jeff Walker, just to mention a few. And there's so many more. And he's really here to help people and their quest to turn their passion and message into a profitable and growing business. He's been through the startup phase multiple times in the past 2 decades and has built a following from scratch. Today, he lives out his passion for helping others find their purpose, their passion, message, and a path to profitability. He's also the host of the Affiliate Guide podcast, and he's a really cool guy just to have on board. And I've been actually wanting to interview Matt for a little while now, and it's just been great to actually have that interview. One thing we talked about was focusing on the leadership principles. But you know what? He said actually that you might need to be willing to be wrong and actually understand that. But if you're willing to do that, that's all good. But he said something that was really, really quite strong. And I think whether you're an entrepreneur, a leader in a large corporate, small corporate, doesn't matter. This whole principle is the same for all of us. And that is your communication style will determine your brand. And so it was a wonderful interview with Matt. Great discussion we had. So what I want you to do is sit back and enjoy the interview.
Welcome to Leadership is Changing. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change. This is taking your leadership to another level by finding the balance between executive excellence and personal well-being through stories that inspire real change. It's time to adapt in our fast-moving world when leadership is changing with your host, Dennis Giannoutsas.
Hey there, listeners. Welcome to another wonderful episode in the Leadership is Changing podcast. Great to have you here with us again today. Now, I've got a guest with me who I've been wanting to have on the show for a while, and he's a cool guy, and he is a guy who's known as the Affiliate Guy, and his name is Matt McWilliams. Matt, a massive welcome to you.
Hey, Dennis. Thanks so much for having me.
Excellent. Hey, look, first of all, congratulations to you on your book that you've just released and how it's gone for you. So it's a really, really cool book, listeners. It's called Turn Your Passions into Profits. So Matt, well done on that. That's really cool to see.
Yeah, that was fun. It's a dream 8 years in the making. And, it's really, I think the most exciting part is that it's in bookstores, and less than 1/100th of 1% of books ever make it in the bookstores, which is kind of crazy. I love that it's there. I love that it's in libraries. This book, newsflash, people, you don't make that much money on books. So for me, it's all about impact, with the book. And so, there was a time in my life, 17 years ago, where libraries made all the difference for me. The greats like Zig Ziglar and Les Brown, Tony Robbins, Brian Tracy, Jeffrey Gitomer, all those people that I learned so much of what I still use today, I learned from reading books in the library. There was a time in my life where spending $15-20 on a book was a difficult decision, So to be able to read 5-6 books a month from the local library was a blessing to me and still has lasting effects. So even like getting it in, most of the libraries around the world's been a big deal to me. So yeah, thank you. It's been pretty cool.
Excellent. Now you mentioned just something there, which is about, not making a lot of money in books but it's more about visibility and so forth. So I'm going to come back to that in a minute around branding and what it means for a leader and their branding and so forth. So we'll come back to that. Now, whereabouts in the world are you today?
Fort Wayne, Indiana. So we're known for nothing. Yeah. We were joking about, I had a team meeting earlier and we were joking about how, I said, somebody had moved, one of our clients had moved from Texas to New Hampshire. And I said, the only thing that could ever make a man do that is his wife's family. And I was like, because that's why I moved north. And I have quite a few people, friends that, I grew up in the South. I grew up in the nice warm weather mostly. And we moved up here because we wanted to pick at least one family to be closer to. And, we ended up kind of in a coin flip picking my wife's family. So now it's one of those things you can never leave because her, all their closest friends and all, kids' closest friends and our soccer and everything is here. So we'll never leave. But yeah, I'm in Fort Wayne, which it's like, it's one of those things, like the thing I love about this place, I'm a city boy. I have to be 5 minutes from everything, but you can be 5 minutes, like our property, we're 5-7 minutes from anything you could ever want. Major restaurants, stores, everything. If I plopped you in our backyard in the middle of summer when the trees are in bloom, you'd think you're out in the country, So I love it here. You can get across town in 15 minutes and yet we have everything, about 300,000 people, but it's so spread out that it doesn't feel like a clustered city. So it's the perfect city, it turns out, for me to live in.
That almost sounds like the city that I grew up here in New Zealand, in Wellington. It's the greater Wellington is about $375,000 people. But I got money on my brain at the moment with profits in the book, right? And the thing is you're right. It's so cool to just be able to do that. Now I live in a city. It's around about 1.7 million. There it is again, people. And it's amazing. Takes longer to get around the place, which is interesting.
Yep.
Now, tell us more about your background, where you've come from, what you've done. Because I know you've had people that you've actually helped as well. Some big names like the Shark Tanks, Kevin Harrington, Tony Robbins, Dean Graziosi, just to name a few, Jeff Walker. And that's actually how I got to know you, actually, through the Jeff Walker side of things. So tell us more about your background, what you've done and that, because the listeners love to hear that.
Yeah, it is crazy to think where we're at now. I mean, the people that I've been able to work with, people that I looked up to for, almost 2 decades in some cases. Yeah, I've worked with Zig Ziglar's company. Zig had already passed away, but I mean, I know his son and I know his, his business, and I've worked with them. I've worked with Tony Robbins' company and Dean Graziosi's launch, helping them. Jeff Walker, like you mentioned, Brian Tracy, Michael Hyatt. Like, these are people that I wouldn't say I idolize. I don't idolize anybody personally. That's just I'm not like that, but people that I got so much value from, that people that impacted my life in such great ways. And I always looked up to them. And then we've worked with them. Like I've worked with these people. It's amazing, like these people I can text and they'll endorse the book, and things like that. And that came about through kind of a weird, long stretch of circumstances, to go back to the book. The original first words in the book were from the Grateful Dead song Truckin'. It says, "What a long, strange trip it's been." And we had to delete those because it turns out with song lyrics, you have to get permission from the publisher of the song. And that's a pain in the butt. And we just decided to change the opening quote. But that's a pretty apt description of my life. What a long, strange trip it's been, because I got into leadership. I got into, business sort of by accident. About 20 some odd years ago, 22 years ago now, I started my first website company, and I was teaching golf schools with my dad, and my dad thankfully fired me because I was terrible at golf instruction, but that was what led to me getting into this online business world. For me, the head of that was like, we were teaching these golf schools, and on the weekends, I'd do the Friday, Saturday, Sunday golf school, about 20 hours of golf school over the course of 3 days. People would pay about $2,000 a person to come. And we had like 4 people come into these golf schools. It's, at the age of 22, 20 hours for $4,000, because we make about $8,000 split it 2 ways. 20 hours for $4,000 is amazing at the age of 22. I was like, Dad, what if we had 10 people? Could we handle 10 people? He's like, yeah, we can handle 10 people in one of these golf schools. So I got on Google, this brand new website. I was like, Dad, there's this website called Google. He's like, what? What's a Google? I'm like, I don't know, but it's like a search engine or something, and you give them money and then they send you traffic. And we teach in the book, and what people are accustomed to today is, today you come to the website, you opt in, you create a lead magnet. That's what step 4 is all about. You create a lead magnet, they subscribe, you nurture the relationship, and then you sell something, right? But at that time, that we didn't know that. You came to my website, you either gave me $2,000 or you left. But about 1 out of every 200 people would give me $2,000. It cost us 10 cents a click. You do the math. $20 to acquire a $2,000 customer. Now that's not replicatable today, just to be clear. But at that time, we were getting 4, 5 people every week signing up for these golf schools. In addition to the 3 to 5 that we already had, we were having 8 to 10 people coming. There were weekends, Dennis, I would leave the weekend with $20,000. All right. There were weekends, because we would do 2 of these golf schools, right? We had a morning and an afternoon session. I'd work 40 hours in a weekend. Don't misunderstand me. It was a long weekend, but I would make 20 grand. That's insane at the age of 22 to make $20,000 in 3 days of work. But it taught me what online business was. And so I was like, okay, I'm all in. My dad fired me because I sucked at golf instruction, but I loved the marketing and the business side. So I started another company, and, we were kind of in desperate straits one day. It was Memorial Day in the US, a weekend, 2005. In the US, I'm supposed to be at a barbecue. I'm supposed to be sitting by a pool. I'm supposed to be hanging out with my friends. I didn't do any of that. I spent the entire weekend trying to figure out how to set up an affiliate program because we needed some way to bring in revenue without paying out revenue in the short term. We didn't have any more money. We were going to go bankrupt. We couldn't make payroll. And so I built this affiliate program from scratch. About 18 months later, we're doing over $1 million a month. And we could talk about that whole process if you want, but like the point was I learned some stuff along the way, and I learned how to do online marketing. I learned how to do online business and how to, build systems and all those things. And so today what we do is we teach a lot of people how to do that. We teach people how to build affiliate programs, how to do affiliate marketing, how to monetize. The book's all about, creating a website around your passions and your message and your, the things that you're interested in, and monetizing that. That's why it's called Passions into Profits, not just how to turn your passions into a hobby or a hobby blog or a podcast. No, it's profits. And so that's what we help people do. And it's been a journey. But ultimately, it led, like you said, to kind of us being able to work with some pretty amazing people along the way.
That's fascinating background and story. If there was one thing that you could pull out of that as probably being one of the massive insights or lessons for you along that journey, would there be anything that sort of stands out for you?
I mean, the theme that stands out in my life and in my business is the word iteration. I use that word a lot. We were having a team meeting earlier, and we were talking about a specific process in our company. I said, guys, right now, we do not have a process. We don't need a process. There's a specific team member that all this work goes through right now. I said, most days he's able to get the work done in 8 hours and he's not overwhelmed. And when he is overwhelmed, he will come to me and tell me he's overwhelmed, and we'll figure it out from there. But we don't need a process for this. So right now we're going to just do it a certain way, and we'll iterate. We'll iterate this process over time as we need it. It's moving fast and breaking things, to quote Facebook. It's just getting stuff out there and, possibly screwing some stuff up along the way. That's part of that process. You're going to screw some stuff up. You're going to make some mistakes, but we're going to iterate. So we're going to get a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better. And we're not seeking perfection, because perfectionism is really just an excuse not to take action. And so if you look at my life and the way my business career, it's been iteration after iteration after iteration, but it's been taking action fast. Making those small mistakes fast is like starting a website. Try things when you only have 140 subscribers. Why? Because you only have 140 people who give a crap. Make mistakes. Every time you start adding zeros, you get 1,400, you start getting a little bit more cautious. 14,000? You're nervous about making mistakes. When you have over 100,000 people who follow you, who are subscribed to your email list, you barely will try anything. So try everything when you have 140 people. Try everything when you have 500 people. Make some mistakes. Don't try to get everything systematized immediately, but then do systematize over time. And so if you observe the way we do business, we have almost two extremes. In the early stages, it's like there's no system. It's willy-nilly, throw crap against the wall and see what sticks. In the latter stages, it becomes very systematized. It becomes very McDonald's-like. Here's exactly how you do this and the system you follow, and here's the process. But sometimes that takes a year and a half before we reach that point.
Yeah, it's interesting because even leaders in business today, whether it be a corporate world or whether it be an entrepreneur, I don't think it's all the same. It's just a scale thing that we're talking about here, really. And it's really interesting about the iteration of things and doing things faster and getting on with things. Too many people procrastinate. They sit back, they wait, they want it to be perfect. And it will never be perfect. And, listeners can't see you and I because this is just audio, but, behind me, I've got a flip chart full of stuff. I'm just always just planning, thinking, and doing that. At times, Matt, I think to myself, you overthink. It's not overthinking it, but it's just, I'm just doing this iteration all the time. When do I stop? And I don't think it ever, by the sounds of what you're saying, I don't think I'll be ever stopping or stop doing that at all. Would that be right?
I personally would not want to. My personality, I have ADD, and I think it's a superpower if I manage it correctly. And part of that is I have an idea a minute. So if I don't get to execute at least one new idea every, week or so, I go crazy. On the flip side of that, if I'm coming up with so many ideas that we don't put the systems in place, the business will crumble. And so for me, at any point in time, in a given month, for example, that it's kind of one of the ways we indirectly operate is like, we're going to we're going to let Matt do his creativity, and we're going to have 2 or 3 new ideas that we're going to test out, and we're going to do that all out. And 1 or 2 of them are going to work. The reason why we have 24 really good ideas a year as a company, because we have 48 ideas. Actually, it's because we have 500 ideas. We test 48 of them, and half of them end up being stupid, or we don't know how to execute them. But then we get to keep the 24 for the next 10 years. The 24 that didn't work, they lasted weeks. That's the thing. So many people are afraid to try things. It's like running a split test on your website. I run a split test on the website. I don't know which one's going to work. Or sometimes I do know and I'm wrong. I'm not a great marketer because I'm smart. I'm a great marketer because I test everything, try everything. And so I pick, in its simplest form, I pick A versus B, and A wins. You know how long I tested B for? A week or 2. I get to keep A for the next 5 years. I get to keep the winner for 5+ years. The loser, I only had to do it for a couple of weeks. Most people aren't willing to be wrong for a couple of weeks. This is a weird example, but somebody noticed one day, I've always known that I was really, really good at puzzles. And somebody asked if it was because I had I had really advanced spatial recognition, and I don't. And so they were trying to figure out why I was really good at puzzles. And then somebody had this random idea and asked me if this was true about, just the way that my brain works. And I was like, no. And it dawned on me, the reason why I'm really good at puzzles, because and why I can literally do like a 500-piece puzzle faster than 99.9% of the population. There are savants who can do them much faster. All right. Just to be clear, but among the non-savant population, I'm faster than 99.9. The reason is I'm willing to be wrong. And I didn't know this wasn't normal. Most people won't even attempt to put a puzzle piece in place unless they're sure it's the right piece, or pretty sure it's the right piece. I'll just go like, boom, boom, boom. I'll find like 20 pieces that look like they might fit, and I'll just be wrong. My wife is fascinated by it. She can't believe how many times I'm wrong. But the reality is, in the time it took me to test those 20 to get the one right piece, of course, sometimes the right piece is the second piece, though. That's what you have to keep in mind. In the time it took me to get to 20, you've been trying to find the right piece to be perfect. I've already found 7 pieces before you found 1 piece. And it's because I'm willing to be wrong a lot. But again, that piece stays in place. Now I'm down to 499 pieces or 498 pieces, right? Because there's 2 that had to connect. And I'm lowering my ability. So then as we get toward the end, I'm right. I'm wrong. I'm right. And I'm right a bunch. And I've already completed the 500-piece puzzle while you're on piece maybe 57. And that's what you have to be willing to do. And both in marketing and just in general business, you have to be willing to do that in leadership. Like, I'm a big believer in being slow to hire and quick to fire, but at some point you have to pull the trigger and bring team members on. And occasionally you're going to have somebody that's a flop. Occasionally you're going to hire somebody that's a wrong fit, and you have to be willing to do that. It's not, I don't go hire 10 people like left and right. Like, no, we have an extensive hiring process. It's about a 4 to 6 month process for an individual to join our team. But at the end of that time, I have to pull the trigger. And you know what? We've been wrong. We've had a couple of bad hires over the years. We've had some dumpster fires over the years. I could tell you stories. It's mind blowing. Some of the people that we've hired over the years, it would be like, how did that person ever end up on our team? We had to fire a lady after her first day. How were we so wrong after a 4-month hiring process that we could be so wrong? We had to fire after the first day. But I'm willing to take those chances because it didn't really cost us that much in the scheme of things.
Oh, I love what you're sharing there about, like the puzzle and just doing it fast. But I think the key words that you're saying there are like execute, action, massive action, doing all that. Too many people sit back and wait, and they need to get going. And I love what you're saying about the pieces and that next minute, right, because you got the no's and the wrong ones out of the way earlier on. So that's pretty good to see as well. Now, the other thing here is I've got a question for you, and that is how did you actually get into leadership yourself?
Yeah, by accident. I was in my mid-20s and we started a company, that company I mentioned earlier. And I didn't know that this is something that people teach. Honestly, we kind of made it up and screwed up a bunch of stuff, but we hired immediately. There's different people that teach it different ways, but we use the matrix where it's, you got things that you're proficient at, you're proficient at and you enjoy them. Those are the highest level activities in your business. So proficiency, enjoyment, and value. Like if you can get all three of those, at the highest level, that's what you should be focused on as a leader. On the flip side is things that you suck at, you hate, and they're not very, profitable, but they need to be done in the business, right? So for, whatever that might, like checking email, right? That's very low on any of those scales. And so we immediately just started going through and delegating and hiring people to take over those things. I knew that I had literally no interest in customer service. I love sales and I love like high level customer service, like our big clients, but the day in and day out stuff, I don't enjoy that. I don't enjoy dealing with my credit card. I need to change my credit card. How do I update it? I don't want to deal with that. It's just not enjoyable for me. I'm terrible at it because I'm not patient enough. And the value is pretty low in the scheme of things, like what we can hire somebody for $15 an hour to do that stuff. So things like that, we immediately hired people, and then we hired people to do other administrative stuff. And then we got to the kind of the next level up, like the things that I'm pretty good at, kind of enjoy them, but not like high level, and they're a medium dollar. And so some stuff like this is the other thing is like, there's things like where I'm not very good at it, but I really enjoy it. And the dollar amounts kind of in that middle range, like graphic design. I really enjoy it. I could do graphic design all day long. I love it, but I'm not the best at it. So we had to finally hire a graphic designer. And so next thing you know, I wake up one day and we've got 52 team members. This is back in 2007 with a different company. I got 13 direct reports at that time. And I realized, oh my gosh, I'm a leader. I was terrible at it. I was still in my mid-20s. I was kind of a punk. I had a huge office and a nice building. I had all the trappings, right? I had all the things that the regular team members didn't have because I was the special executive, and one of the three, partners in the company. And I was the youngest of the bunch. So I kind of, like I said, I was kind of a punk. And, as things developed, I became more and more important in my own mind and really kind of sucked as a leader for a while there until I got out of that company. It's a long story. Don't need to get into that. But yeah, ultimately just by accident, we built the team. And next thing you know, we had 50 some odd people and, oh, wait, I'm one of the three, and that's how I got into it.
Yeah, cool. Now, talk about hiring people and bringing people on board. And actually it's about letting go as well as a leader and not thinking that you have to be everything to everybody. So what was that process for you, that transition of letting go and letting others come in and take over?
For me, it was, like I said, we just went up the ladder until like even recently, about a year and a half ago, we hired, in this business, we hired a copywriter. Copywriting is something that I'm really good at. I'd give myself an A-. I really enjoy, and it's very valuable to our company. So we're even at that point where unless it's 3 A+ across the board, I don't do it. But it started with getting rid of like the straight Fs. And then worked up to like, the straight Ds, and then things that were like Cs and Bs. And even, like I said, even things that were really high, like there are things where I'm really good at, but they're low dollar. So we got rid of those, and things I really enjoy. So now it's only the few things in the company where I'm an A+ across the board. They're the highest dollar amounts, the highest enjoyment, and the highest proficiency level. And for me, it was just, that was the process, kind of working my way up through there. I have had the philosophy for about 15 years now. It took me about a year or two to develop that, where I'm right that probably no one will ever do it like I do it. Here's the thing about no one will ever do it like I do it. Half the time, that means they'll do it a little bit worse than I will. And we'll break that down in a second. Okay. Of that half where they don't do it as good as I do it, 90% of that is not fatal to the company, or 100% of that is not fatal to the company. Most mistakes are $10 to $50 mistakes, not $5,000 to $50,000 mistakes. None of them are going to cripple the company. And they typically on average do it 80 to 90% as well in that half. Okay. In that half where they do it worse. 80% done as well as me, and I don't have to be involved, is a huge freaking win. That's a huge win. The other half where they don't do it like me, you know what they do? They do it better. And I find that all the time. Like we have processes, we have a playbook, and you were to follow those processes. But if you innovate and find a better way, then by gosh, we're all for it. And so I give it a great example. I had a guy on our team. He's about he's a lower level. He's kind of on the second tier in our company, if you will, in terms of pay. And I had a specific project, and here's the 10 steps. And he DM'd me one day in Slack and said, "Hey, just want to let you know I'm almost done." I was like, how are you almost done with this? This is like a 40-hour project. He said, just so you know, I went ahead and I purchased this. There's a software. He paid for it out of his own money. I ended up saying, dude, I'm going to reimburse you for that. That's genius. We bought it for the company. I was so blown away. So there's a software, it's $30, it's a guy that makes about $17 an hour, $18 an hour. He's like, I just bought this software. He's like, I'm done. And he finished this project in 8 hours. He did not do it like I do it. He did it better. So we have to be comfortable with, they don't do it like I do it. They might even sometimes do it a little bit worse. And you just have to be comfortable with that. Sometimes our customer service reps, they don't include that one sentence in there that I would have included because I would have taken the extra minute to write the little note at the end, something, right? But you know what? They updated the credit card. The customer's happy. The customer can log in. The customer got the refund. The customer got what they wanted. Is it really that big of a deal they didn't include that little note at the end that I would have included? Not a big deal. So pick your battles, I think is the message there. Like, I'm not going to get upset about that. And so I've been at peace with that. That was the big thing for me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Really good. Thanks for sharing that, because I think it's a really good example. Now, I said before about branding and that, because you mentioned certain things. I think as leaders today, their brand, what should they do to build that brand for it to be actually out there? Because I think the important thing is for the brand to be created and what to be known as, but also for it to be out there in the marketplace. Whether you're a leader in a corporate, whether you're a leader in a small to medium-sized enterprise or business, and even if you're an entrepreneur, it doesn't matter. Sporting person, it's a brand. But how do you get it out there to be visible in the market?
Yeah. I mean, that's what step 3 of the book's all about. I mean, the idea of capturing attention, and I'm one of those people, like, I hate podcasts where you get an author on and you're like, well, I cover that in step 3 of the book. All right. And, I mean, like, you asked me a question. I want to at least give you some sort of an answer. And so, there's a few ways that, like, with branding up. So just to be clear, step 1 and step 2 are foundational to the book. We talk about, step 1 is all about clarifying who you help and what your passion is. Step 2 is actually committing to leading. You're listening to a leadership podcast. You're probably already there, but there's some stuff in there that I think will reshape how you see yourself as a leader, not only to your team, but to your brand, to your followers, to your customers. You are a leader, and that can be a pretty uncomfortable thing. And so there's a lot of strategies in there that'll help you. But step 3 is all about capturing attention. The reality is with your brand, like, and as a leader, it's never been easier than at any point in human history. That at any point in human history, it's never been easier to get noticed. Like, you can be completely a nobody and you can go viral in 20 minutes on Facebook or Twitter. Standing out has never been harder, though. And there's a correlation between those two. The easier it is to get noticed in today's world, the harder it is to stand out. There's so much noise. It used to be, how many famous people were there in 1950 in the United States? Let's go with 10 authors, a couple of artists, a few politicians, let's see, a few movie stars, handful of musicians. Maybe 100 people were considered famous in 1950. There's a guy on YouTube named PewDiePie. All right. There's another one named Mr. Beast. My son the other day, there's a guy on YouTube. He's actually a friend of mine, and I know him from a different area, but he has a Pokemon channel on YouTube. I just wrote a best-selling book. It's in stores. You can walk into Barnes & Noble, see my book. I'm like internet famous. My son doesn't care. My son's 7. He doesn't care. When he found out that I was friends with Deep Pocket Monster from YouTube, he lost his stuff. He went utterly insane. Oh my gosh, sure. Deep Pocket, can he give me this Pokemon card? Like, it's so easy to get noticed, but because of that, it's never been harder to stand out.
Yeah.
And so how do we stand out? And so I walked in the book, there's things like your style and your personality, your communication style. As a brand, your communication style as the leader of the company is what dictates the brand's communication style. If you're not funny, don't try to be funny. Don't try to be like Taco Bell's Twitter account. It's going to be a disaster. Like, you can't play that game. So you need to find, what is that about your personality that stands out? I write about in the book about Chris Rock. This guy went up to Chris Rock after he was on stage and said, "Are you like that all the time?" You're like, "No." Like, "Do you think this is how I act with my friends?" He's like, "I'm me, but I'm 3 times me." So you think about, like, the physical characteristics that you have, the personality characteristics that you have. It could be your clothes, all those things. Like, be you, but 3 times you. For example, they're not watching this, but, like, I wear the same thing every day in winter. I wear jeans and a hoodie. All right. In the summer, I wear shorts and a t-shirt and flip-flops. That's what I wear every single freaking day of the year. Those 4 things. All right. If it's a little bit cold, I might wear shorts and a hoodie, really, just to kind of like mix it up. Or if it's, if it's like 65 degrees, right? And so I wear the same thing all the time. I don't really stand out in my appearance. So that's not some place that I stand out. But in yours, like if your culture and your company is like suit and tie, maybe you need to go 3-piece suit, or maybe you need to go the other direction, and you need to you need to be like no coat and roll up your sleeves. I don't know. Like, what can you do to stand out in your niche? There's other things you can do to stand out, like, your experience, your degrees, your pedigree, the places you've worked, awards that your company's won, things like that are ways you could stand out. Your personal background, the background of the founder. We all love the rags to riches story. Well, I don't have the rags to riches story. Okay. How else, how can you stand out? Think about the ways you can stand out. And then the last way is just your method. Think about the way that your company does things. Like, what is your actual method? Like, do you do in your content? Do you have blog posts? Do you have a podcast? Do you do videos? If you do a podcast, yours is an interview-based, podcast, Dennis. And yours, this will be a 45-minute episode or whatever, right? So if I were to compete against Dennis, if everybody in my niche was like Dennis, I would come up with a daily 5-minute podcast. You're going to stand out. It's not a less frequent, longer one. This isn't, you're not Joe Rogan with the 3-hour podcast. You're daily 5 minutes, like on your commute. Even if your commute is from your bedroom to your home office, you can still listen to the 5-minute, 7-minute podcast. But if you've got a lot of solo podcasts, then do an interview podcast. So think about ways that you can change your method, the way that you deliver your content, things like that are ways that you can stand out. Tell stories versus just like, basic lessons. If your competitors are all physical products, then go digital. Or if they're all digital, go physical, things like that.
There you go, listeners. If you haven't already got this book, you need to get this book. Turn Your Passions into Profits. It's awesome. Matt, do you have a favorite leader?
I have a very weird answer to that. There's so many great leaders. I'm a history buff, Dennis. So I love studying Winston Churchill, FDR, Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, all these, Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Mandela. All these people are people that come to mind. But it's just such a weird answer until I explain it to people. My favorite leader is George W. Bush. And this isn't a political thing. It's really not at all. Here's what I love about George W. Bush. This one thing, and I think it's such a powerful lesson for leaders and for brand builders and for anybody. When he ran for governor in 1994, he had 4 campaign platforms. If I remember correctly, it was educational reform, juvenile justice reform, tort reform, and I don't remember the other. But for years, I could tell you all 4. When he ran for president, he had a few things that he campaigned on. Now, of course, everything went to, crap with 9/11 and it changed the priorities, but he made his campaign very simple. He had 4 things and he repeated those 4 things over and over and over again. And the media they hated him for it. And they would ask him, do you have a 5th priority? And he would say, yeah, to get the first 4 done.
Nice.
And I think as leaders, we can, especially when you're like me, you got ADD and you can be like bounce off the wall. No, we got every month or every quarter, we have 3 or 4 big rocks. Every now and again, it's 4. Most months or most quarters, it's 3. That's it. We are all in. Anything that I have that I bring to the table or anybody else brings to the table, unless there's some sort of weird critical nature to it, if it doesn't fit into those 3 or 4 things, it just gets punted down the road. Well, great idea. Maybe we'll do it next quarter. We are like locked in on those 3 or 4 things. And our 5th priority is to get the first 4 done. That is it. And so I think that's one of the reasons why I've always been attracted to him as a leader. Nobody would ever accuse him of necessarily being the greatest communicator. He was not Ronald Reagan. He was not FDR, but you can't, what is the word I'm looking for? Can't discount his track record. When he ran for major office, governor and president, he's, 4 for 4 in elections. So he's clearly doing something right. And I just always respected that about him.
Yeah, that's great because you tie that back to what you said earlier on about, your communication style will determine your brand. And it's very similar to what you just said there. So if the guy's sharing 3 things, 4 things, it's easy for us to remember, easy for us to talk about. I go into organizations, Matt, and they'd say, how many leadership behaviors do you have? 21. Awesome. Can you tell me one? No, they can't tell me even one. And they make it too difficult. And I think you're so right what you're saying there. And keeping it 3 to 4 things, nice and simple, but get those over the line. And then if you think about what Michael Hyatt teaches us, right, about focusing on three things for the day, for the week, for the quarter, and things like that. It's just very simple, but it's impactful. It really works hard nicely as well. Matt, the show here is called Leadership is Changing. When we talk about that title or that statement, what does that mean for you?
I mean, clearly it means evolution. When I first got into leadership almost 20 years ago, everybody that worked with me was older than me. I mean, literally, I was the youngest person at the company, with the exception of one person that we hired. Out of the first 30 people that I was involved in hiring, every one of them was older than me. And now I'm 43. Most of the people that work with me are younger than me. That in and of itself is a big change. I mean, it's, I was a 24, 25-year-old hiring 28 to 35-year-olds. Now I'm a 43-year-old hiring 28 to 38-year-olds. So that's been a definite change. I think that's just normal for people when they spend a lot of time, in a leadership role. For me, I mean, things are different just in the world. I mean, 25, we had an office. I haven't stepped foot in an office that was mine. I've stepped foot in some clients' offices. I haven't stepped foot in an office of my own since 2010. I've been virtual for 13 years. My entire team is virtual. My team is literally, until recently, we only had one team member that was in the same time zone as me. We now have two. So there's three of us in the Eastern time zone. No, four. I'm sorry. We just started four. Four of us in the Eastern time zone. There's like four in the Central time zone, none in the Mountain time zone, two or three, four in the Pacific time zone. We got Thailand, India, Europe. I mean, like, we're all over the place. And so that's a much different thing than what I've done. So I think there's a lot of things like that are just evolving. What's important, to people at the age of 25 is different than what's important to people at the age of, 45, even like the age of 35, just evolving with that, and what's important to the people that you're hiring and bringing onto your team. And obviously how we communicate virtually versus in person, very different. There is no just like, hey, Elaine, did you get that thing I sent you? Yeah. Okay, cool. There's none of that. Like, I have to go to Slack and message them and wait a period of time until they respond to me. And if it's really urgent, I'll text them, and I still have to wait a period of time. We have to schedule phone calls and things like that. It's a little bit different, but you adjust and you adapt.
Yep. And so you Wallace, were leading the world, really, because over the last 3 years, we've seen this happen a lot, whereby organizations work from home because of the pandemic and so forth.
Yeah.
So well done.
It had no effect on us. I mean, I hate to say this, I'm not diminishing the negatives that came out of it, but as far as lifestyle changes, it had almost no effect on us. We homeschool and I work from home, and all of our people are virtual. So for us, we just kept operating as normal. Like, it was the only effect it had on us was everybody was using Zoom. And it took like 12 hours for a recording to render. And we were so annoyed. I'm like, we've been using Zoom for 5 years. Now everybody discovers it and they're getting on my nerves. That was like the only effect that it had on us. It was kind of funny.
Yeah. But Matt, you're leading from the front, and the rest of the world is actually finally caught up to the way that you were working. And some of them wanted to give it a go and see what it's like, which is really interesting. Now, you and I are living in a world that seems to get faster and faster. Technology, tools, software, business, social, from a social perspective, and also from a data perspective. What do you think a leader needs to do today to be successful in that fast-paced, ever-changing world?
I think probably the key thing, then we talked about systems. Systems are important, developing systems, repeatable, a playbook. Here's how we do things. Gino Wickman, the author of Traction and Rocket Fuel, call it like, your company name way. So the Matt McWilliams Consulting way, that's not what we call it. We just call it the playbook. Here's the playbook. And then we have subsections based on, what department you're in. But like, this is it. This is how we do things. That's a big one, because you can evolve that with the way things are changing, but there's still a system, an overarching system in place. But I think the big one is empathy. Part of the reason why I'm a much better leader today than I was 18 years ago, I have kids. There was a time where I didn't understand it. Like, why would somebody call in sick? Or why would somebody say they can't come to work because their kid's sick? That's a stupid reason. I didn't have empathy. I was 24. I was an idiot. I understand now. When your kid's sick, you want to do everything you can to help them. Now, it's different because I can be with my sick kid and have a laptop and at least get a few things done at the same time. But empathy, just being able to understand people, understanding that, not everyone's like me. In fact, that's a good thing. Not everyone's like me, and most people aren't. Understanding that some people process things slower. Some people process things faster. Some people move too fast. Some people move too slow. Some people are more emotional. Some people this and that and the other, right? And so for us, one of the big pillars in our company is I do a one-on-one with all my direct reports, every other week for 20 minutes. And we don't talk about work. We might spend like 3 minutes talking about something where they have a specific problem they didn't want to bring up in a team setting. We just talk about life. I just get to know them. After about 4 months of that, I relate to them very, very well. And I understand that, okay, this person has this person homeschools, they've got 6 kids, and, their husband's going through a major medical challenge right now. All right. So their schedule is different. And I talk to them and I say, okay, we need to adjust your work schedule. Are there times of the day where it's really hard for you to focus on work? Yeah, from 1 to 3 p.m. every day. Well, that's typically, you would consider that to be prime work time, right? And I say, you know what? Then take off from 1 to 3. Get the work done at night. But I don't need you from 1 to 3. I need you on our 12 o'clock meeting. You got to be there. We have a 12 o'clock team meeting. I need you there from 12 to 1 on these, these days of the week. But otherwise, from 1 to 3, just put on your calendar. You're unavailable. Don't feel any pressure to take a client call, a coaching call, or a team meeting. And then just tell people like, hey, Monday through Friday, 1 to 3, I'm unavailable. You want to meet with me? It needs to be before 12 or after 3. And we make that work. And that comes from, that empathy, which is just, again, it's not something I have by default. I hate to say this, I'm actually a pretty unempathetic person by nature, but I've learned to, develop it and to see things from other people's perspectives.
That's good. Yeah. And, you more or less answered my other question, which was about employees' expectations of leaders today. And you've said a few things throughout the interview already about that kind of stuff as well, which is really good. So, yeah. Now, if I was to get your crystal ball on, just to bring it all together, get your crystal ball out and think about the future, where do you see leadership being in 5 years? And in particular, where do you see it with technology and the online side of things?
I mean, the principles have always been there. The McDonald brothers developed the systems idea of business, 70 years ago, but they weren't the first. Henry Ford developed the assembly line, 100 and some odd years ago. We're doing systems now, but we're using technology. We're using project management software and, communication methods that are different. Process is still the same. The basics are the same. The principles are the same. Like, that's one of the things with the book. Like, I don't talk about Facebook in the book. I don't talk about how to use Facebook. I don't talk about how to use TikTok or Twitter. Somebody listening to this 6 years from now might be going, what the heck is Twitter? I think I heard about that in a history book, right? What was TikTok? Was that thing that like kids danced on or whatever and had those dumb challenges? And what was that? Why? Because they went away. One of the major platforms that we're all using today will be gone in 5 or 6 years. I guarantee you, it will pull a MySpace and it will be completely gone. There will be a new one that pops up that will do something amazing, and we'll all be, this book doesn't talk about those because I wanted it to be timeless. I wanted it to be evergreen. I wanted it to be principle-based and tactical-based, not specific strategies for specific platform-based. Same is true of leadership. Like, focus on the principles. Empathy is important now. It was important 20 years ago. I just sucked at it back then. Developing systems is important now. It's going to be important in 7 years. Might you be using different tools? Like, did any of us do screencast recordings 20 years ago to show people how to do something? No. We had to get on a phone call with them and go, hey, do you see that blue button at the top? Where there's the blue button at the top right. You see the blue button? No. Scroll up a little bit. Do you see? Oh, there it is. There. Okay. Now click that. It took 45 seconds to get them to click a freaking blue button, right?
Yep.
Today we go, okay, you scroll up here, you click on the blue button, but it takes 2 seconds. So we've reduced the time to do something like that by 43 seconds because of technology. But the principle's still the same. We're going to walk them through step by step and develop a process. All those principles are going to be the same in 5 years, Dennis. All of the things, they're going to evolve, whether it be through technology or understanding. I think the education side of things is helping. I mean, yeah, there are more, you got podcasts like this one, they're getting this in front of people. I wish I'd had somebody telling me the things that I've said today 20 years ago. I'd have been a better leader 20 years ago. I also would have a really crappy story right now because it would not have been really, you asked me today, why are you a good leader? Oh, because I listened to a podcast 20 years ago and it gave me all the answers. All right, well, that's a boring story. So we have to be willing to embrace those mistakes, of course. Yep. But yeah, the principles are going to be the same 5 years ago as they are from now. Empathy, systems, leaning into your strengths and identifying the strengths of your team members. Like with our team, we have one of our policies is every year we do an audit, that matrix that I shared earlier, value, proficiency, and enjoyment. We do an audit and we drop off whatever's at the bottom every single year. You get to drop off one thing. Doesn't mean that as somebody who comes and joins, our team, that you're going to only be operating at your highest level. No, when you work for somebody, sometimes you have to do the crap tasks. Somebody has to do them. And sometimes that's going to be you. But can we have you operating at 70% in your highest level throughout the year? And at the end of the year, we realize you're down to 60. Boom, we will delete something from you and move you back up to 70. And then we'll continue to recalibrate every year. We're going to be doing that regardless. Like, that's just a principle in our company.
Yeah, awesome. Awesome. Matt, if people wanted to get hold of you, where should they go?
Yeah, best place to go, guys, go grab the book, Turn Your Passions into Profits. You can grab it. The best place to grab it, you can order it on Amazon. You can go to stores. It's in Barnes and Nobles nationwide. It's in Target, and you can order from Walmart. Where if they sell books, they sell my book. But if you go to passionsintoprofitsbook.com/Dennis, only one in, right, Dennis? passionsintoprofitsbook.com/Dennis. I know Dennis will put that in the show notes for you. Go there. We've got about $500 in extra bonuses for your listeners that are going to help you guys take this stuff to the next level. So yeah, you can buy it anywhere, but that's the best place to get it. Otherwise, check me out at mattmcwilliams.com and reach out to me. Hit me up. My number's on there. You can text me anytime, email me, all that stuff's on there. So I love to interact with you guys.
Awesome, Matt. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. Buddy. Thank you. Hey, listeners, go and grab this book. It's awesome. I've read it already, and I'm going to reread it again and again because it's just wonderful stuff. But it's also, there are actual symbolizes for you to do as well that Matt gets you to do. And here's a little clue. You want to work out who is Gwen. And when he talks about Gwen, just find out what that means as well, because it's actually a really quite cool story that Matt shares. All right, listeners. Hey, thanks for joining us. Until next time. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Leadership is Changing with your host, Dennis Giannoutsas. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change, inspiring executives and leaders to adapt and lead a bigger game in a fast-moving world.